Hey, Jim Roman here. Welcome to another episode of the Jim Roman Show, where we talk about how to build a better business so you can build a better life. Today's episode is on roadblocks. Roadblocks that get in your way. If you've been joining us on our Micro to Millions series for the month of March, we've been talking about how to grow a company. Whether you're trying to go to $250,000, $500,000, or $1 million or more, I've been sharing with you success stories we've helped companies over the years to accomplish. Today is a special day because we're going to be talking about roadblocks. What gets in the way of our success? If you're the type of person who, feel overwhelmed, you have too much on your plate, you feel alone, you feel lost, you've lost your sense of direction, we want to say today's episode is for you. I have a lot to share today. So again, thank you for joining us. If this is your first time here, welcome. In our show, in our episode here, we talk about a particular topic for say 20 minutes to help you, again, build a better business, build a better life. We ask that you comment, you ask questions and things like that, whether you're watching it live or recorded, we want to hear from you. And as always, if you like what you hear, we ask that you like, share, and follow. And if you're looking on YouTube, we ask you to subscribe and put on that notification button. So let's jump into today. So as part of this series, we've been talking about how to go from micro to millions while having a life. In the first episode, we talked about the philosophy that we have uncovered and discovered over the years to help all size companies be successful. In episode 2, we talked about the tools that you can use to be able to be successful in business and even outside your business. And then last week, we talked about some success stories, some examples of specific industries and what they did to go to the next level. Today, I want to talk about those roadblocks, those things that get in the way of our success. So let's jump right into it. So the first roadblock that a lot of people face, I find, is either A, they start to feel alone, they feel overwhelmed, they feel lost. So what can you do if you feel alone, lost, you lost a sense of direction? And that is to get positive. One of the reasons why we get off track in our life and in our business is because we don't manage our mindset. And I've talked about this numerous episodes in the past. I even wrote a blog on my website at jimromanonline.com, where I talked about having a positive mindset is one of the keys to success. And I share, what do I do typically, ritualistically, every single day to stay positive? You see me out and about, you see me on these episodes, I'm very positive. But I'm not always positive. I have bad days. I have tough days. And so what do I do to make better days to remove that roadblock to my success, remove that roadblock to the next level of my business? Well, I have a ritual. Every morning I wake up at 5 o'clock, 5 a.m. I get myself a cup of coffee. I sit in my reading chair and I read my devotional. I have a devotional called The Upper Room on my phone to get me in the right mindset. The second thing I do, not every single day, but as often as I can, is I count my blessings. That I'm coming to you live right now across the world is a blessing. That's huge. My clients are a blessing to me. My connections, my community is a blessing to me. And I want to remind myself of that because I know a lot of people have it a lot harder than I do. I don't even have it hard. I know people have it really tough. And if we can get positive, I think we can get those positive results. I read a Bible regularly, if I can. I read some scriptures to pull out the good in it, to inspire me and encourage me to act on that and love my neighbor. And then the last thing that I love to do to really get myself beyond the roadblock of negativeness or feeling lost is I read. And I read books that make a big difference. And these are the 2 books I'm reading right now, and I'd love to share them with you. If you've not read them, Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman. He also wrote the book Traction, you can see behind me on my bookshelf. What I love about Rocket Fuel, it's talking about how there are technically two people to a successful business. There's the visionary and the integrator. And he has a lot of great examples like McDonald's. Ray Kroc did not become successful on his own. He had a number 2 person. A lot of successful businesses, Microsoft, Bill Gates did not become successful on his own. He had a number 2 person. And so I love knowing that you don't have to do it alone, and books like this are just inspirational because I've been running my own business for a long time. And when I have partners, I'm pumped, and when I don't have partners, I'm less pumped. And so maybe you need to get a partner in crime, a partner person to talk to on a regular basis, or maybe even a partner in your business. The second book that I'm just reading is The One Thing by Gary Keller. And what I love about this book is because he gives practical advice on picking one thing to work on at any given time. He talks about how to pick that one thing and how to-do lists are really to-die lists. They're not as powerful as they can be. And my point of this, these just happen to be the two books that I'm reading right now. And I realize I get really excited when I'm reading. And when I'm not reading, I get bummed out. And this can be a lonely ride. I mean, whether you're in property management, real estate, construction, contracting, it can be very, very, very lonely. One of the ways that I get beyond my loneliness is, one, socialize more, get out more, see people more, and things like that, as well as read more. So hopefully that will help you. Please comment below a book that you're reading right now and a little bit about that book, maybe a book that you recommend somebody who's lost their sense of direction, feel lost and alone in life. What books would you recommend for them? Another thing that I would do is if I'm lost and alone and I'm not feeling that sense of drive, I revisit my 5 drivers. You remember several episodes ago, we talked about the 5 drivers to success. And 2 of those 5 drivers is why do you do what you do and where do you want to be beyond the business? If you have a copy of those drivers, go to my website at jimromanonline.com, click on programs, and scroll down to the Start Here program. In the Start Here program, it talks about the Micro Millions philosophy and the tools that go with it, totally complimentary, no charge to you. And in that deck of tools is the 5 drivers. And if you've been in any of our episodes, I talk about this probably every 3 episodes about the why and the where. Why do you do what you do? A great book to learn about that is Start With Why by Simon Sinek. He talks about how if you had a purpose and passion for your profession, makes the biggest difference. He talks about also in this book and how when we go networking, people always ask you, what do you do? And you usually say what you do and how you do it. But do we ever talk to people that we meet about why we do what we do, the purpose and passion? In fact, 10 years ago, I was running a seminar called a Sales Manager Mindset. And I said to the seminar, what I want you guys to do when someone asks you what you do this week, do me this one favor, say what you do, but then follow up with the why you do what you do, your purpose and passion. In other words, reconnecting to our purpose and passion makes the biggest difference. And if you don't have a why, I highly recommend you start there. Because that's one of the reasons why people hit a roadblock. They hit a roadblock, they hit a wall, and they can't get through that wall because they don't have a why. Your why will get you through the wall, over the wall, under the wall. It will get you where you want to go. And so having a purpose and passion makes the biggest difference. I can't share that enough. What else can you do? What other roadblocks do you have? I have some notes here that I'm reading from so that I can give you the best knowledge. You know another roadblock that people have? Not able to sell enough services. Let me say that again. They don't have the ability, or they're getting stuck on not being able to sell enough. And there's several reasons why people don't have enough sales at the end of the month. Let me give you some examples of why that happens. Number one, they're looking at it as sales. I wouldn't look at sales as sales because who wants to be sold? Now, people love to buy, but they don't like being sold. How can you get someone to buy from you? Well, I would say learn a different way of presenting your product and services. One of my favorite books on serving and not selling is How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success by Frank Bettger. And what I love about this book, it really is teaching you how to get people to buy from you. One of my favorite stories in the book, there's a gentleman who's selling magazine subscriptions. And he met Frank at one of his speaking engagements. And he went up to Frank and said, hey, Frank, I'm having a hard time selling my magazine subscriptions. After a couple of minutes with Frank, Frank gave him a couple of ideas. The guy runs off. And Frank says in his book, he says, yeah, that guy's not going to listen. He's just not. Months later, Frank's at another speaking engagement. And this gentleman comes up to him and says, Frank, your advice was the best advice I could ever have gotten. Thank you so much. Frank was so surprised that this guy even listened and did something with it. He said, I realized that I was selling magazine subscriptions and that wasn't working because I was selling. I wanted to serve them. And what I was able to do is I realized because of your coaching that I sold people time. I got them time back. In other words, the magazine he sold was getting a week's worth of news in one sitting. Let me say that again. He was selling a week's worth of news in 1 week. He was saving people time. They never talk about the magazine, but I really believe it was Newsweek. And this guy was selling the subscriptions and became super successful at it. The point of that is maybe we can get people to buy from us versus us selling them. We created a process here at Business Owners Institute called Selling the 7 C's, getting people to buy from you. How I came up with the 7 C's is I found a lot of times when I would sit down with a prospect, I would present to them one way, and then the next prospect, I would talk to them another way, and another way, and another way. And I was just different ways of talking to the prospects. And I remember reading the book E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And Michael says in the book, you want to create an experience for your first customer as you want the 1,000 customer. And I got to thinking, when it comes to sales presentation, shouldn't the first prospect have the exact same experience as the 1,000th prospect? Yes, obviously with little changes, with different examples, but definitely the same process. So I set out to do this. I promised myself that for the next 10 prospect appointments, I would run them the exact same way. And I had 5 C's that I would follow, now 7 C's, that I would follow in order to see what would happen. And as I went through each one of those presentations, I would get a sale, not get a sale, get a sale, not get a sale. And at the end of the 10 presentations, I went back and I analyzed my results. And the interesting thing was when I followed the 5 C's, now 7 C's, I would get the sale 60 to 80% of the time. If I skipped a C or forgot to do a C, 9 times out of 10, I would not sell them at all. So I committed to myself that going forward, when I meet with my prospects, I'm going to follow the 7 C's regularly and consistently. And guess what? My sales went through the roof. So maybe you need a sales process. In our case, a buying process. What's another reason why people don't get enough sales? I think because they don't go for no. And guess what? Yes, there's a book on that. The book Go for No. And it's not what you think it was. When I first got this book, by the way, I love how thin it is. I love thin, short books. Same thing as this one, pretty short. Is that it's about being persistent. Being persistent. Don't wait. Don't stop at no, but being persistent. What do I mean by this? Many, many years ago, a lot of you know my story. My story back in the day, I shared it with you. Back in 1993, I started my first business. I went out on my own, and within 2 years, I went broke, bankrupt, and homeless for a short period of time. I failed miserably. Why? Because I failed to sell anything. So I got a mentor. I got back on my feet in 1996. I was in Williamsburg, Virginia, selling advertising. And I was in the Pottery Barn area, area, selling some ads. And I thought the guy said no to me when I presented my product and service. I went out to the bench. If you remember a couple of episodes ago, and I'm sitting on the bench, and I decided I was going to take my own life because I was done and tired of being broke. I was tired of being told no, and I'm going to go home and I'm going to take my life. And a voice, loud as can be, said, "Go ask him why he said no." And I went, what was that? Nobody was around me. And before I can think about that same thought, but I'm embarrassed to say to this day, the voice said, "Go ask him why he said no." Okay, I got up from the bench. I walked over to the store, and as I was walking, who asks why someone says no? But I'm going to ask it because it kind of freaked me out. I went into the store and I said, "Sir, can I ask you why you said no?" He said, "I didn't say no. Come back next week and I'll buy it. In fact, it's so inexpensive, I'll get other advertisers for you." I went back out, sat down on the bench, and I said, "What just happened? I was going to give up. I was going to quit. I was going to let this roadblock stop me because of the word no." And the fact of the matter, he never said no. He said, "Come back." So I made a commitment to myself that very day. I would never take my life again or think about how taking my life. And number 2, I would become this best salesperson I could be on the planet. And after reading Going for No and being persistent in these people's professions inspired me completely. In fact, I love these 2 books together. I recommend to every salesperson, sales manager, sales team on the planet. Probably the best sales training you'll ever get, other than scripts from companies that do that kind of stuff. If you're familiar with the, what do you call it, the airbags, they talk about how airbags got into cars. It was a sales approach and how he went about it. Talks about how Abraham Lincoln became president after so many no's. I won't tell you any more than that. I highly recommend this book because it's thin and it's very, very powerful. The moral of the story is, number 1, when it comes to roadblocks, a lot of times it's a mental roadblock. And I'm really asking you, what are you doing to get into the right mentality, right mindset? Do you have a morning routine that you do to get you ready for the day? I highly encourage it to remove that roadblock that you do that. Are you the type of person who feel lost and alone and lost your sense of direction? Well, maybe reading or watching inspirational movies or getting a mentor will make a big difference there. Or maybe you're not getting enough sales because you don't have the right sales training, the right sales mindset. Then I highly recommend you figure that out. For me, it's not looking at sales, it's looking at serving that made the game-changing move for me to remove that roadblock. Well, you're going, Jim, that's all fine. I'm positive. I got plenty of sales, but I just can't get the work done. My roadblock is I can't get the work done. What do I do? Well, there's several answers to that. Interesting enough, I was watching TikTok today. I don't recommend TikTok. It's very addictive. Do not do TikTok. I'm telling you, don't do it. But if you were to do it, you would learn about time boxing. Time boxing supposedly comes from the concept of Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin would box out his time, we would call block timing, that you can get things done and eliminate and minimizing distractions to do that. Going back to the to-do list that I was talking about in the book, the one thing. Gary Keller talks about focusing on one thing and getting rid of every other thing. He also talks about the one thing is that we have a lot of mini priorities and very few maximum priorities, and meaning that your big priorities are being put on hold for your mini priorities. And he says to identify those major priorities and get those done first, even if they're few and far between, than the many mini priorities that you want to do to feel good about yourself. And I think that's very, very powerful. That was today's chapter, if you will. And so we take the block boxing to block timing. They come out of several books by design. One of them is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, as well as The Power of Full Engagement. One of the reasons why you're not getting the work done is that you're in an environment where you're being distracted by other people's problems, priorities. Find an environment where you can minimize distractions. Shut off your phone, shut off your emails, so you can focus on that one thing for a period of time. Well, maybe for you, it's not time blocking as it is juggling between bringing in business and getting the work done. Another roadblock we have people, they're trying to figure out how do they bring in business or get the work done, or try to get the work done when bringing in the business. See, the problem with a lot of people's roadblocks with that is they think it's one or the other. And the fact of the matter is they're both important. And I would encourage you to figure out how to get both of them done at the same time. So often we bring in business at the cost of getting the work done, or we're getting the work done and we're not bringing in business. I can do a whole seminar on that, but as a major block where people are juggling between those two priorities, one or the other. And I say, figure out both. How do you do both? How I did it over the years, I delegated out to other people. I delegated out to other resources. I delegated it to virtual assistants. I delegated it to team members. I built a team, and now I'm able to go to the next level because I have a team. So I would ask, are you delegating enough? Are you trying to do too much at one time? Are you trying to juggle between these two priorities? I say, let's get through that roadblock. Now you're saying, Jim, that's great. Okay, I got to get people, but how do I get my people to perform? That's another roadblock people face, is getting people to perform. Well, guess what? They got books about that too. And these are two of my favorite books on the topic: Leadership and the 1-Minute Manager, Dan Elser with the Training Academy. Thank you much for this recommendation. And The 5 Functions of a Team. Thank you, Kay Congdon by Excellence, for reminding me about this book. This is helping you to get your people to perform. So often people don't know how to manage. They don't know how to be leaders. And I say there are many resources out there that can help you with this. What I love about this book, Leadership Meets the 1-Minute Manager, it talks about the 4 types of employees that you have, or team members you have: those who are super motivated but need guidance, to those who are driven but need pats on the back, and everyone in between. What I love about the 5 dysfunctions of team is that what goes into building an actual team and what makes it dysfunctional. It's not what you always think, and I highly recommend that. Now you're probably saying, Jim, I get that I should hire somebody, but they're not going to do it as good as me. I would disagree. They're probably going to do it better than you, because if you find the right people, they work the right thing in the right way. So often we say they can't do it as good as we can, is because your past experience doesn't need to be your future experience. In fact, we created a hiring guide, a hiring checklist to help people before they hire, during the hiring process, and more important, after you hire somebody is when it really begins. And so I'm going to say maybe one of your roadblocks to success, roadblocks to the next level, is getting your people to perform or having people to perform for you. Finally, the last thing in regards to roadblocks is having a life. A lot of us are not going to the next level because we're not living our life along the way. If you've ever been in any of my seminars or webinars, I love to ask the question, if you had enough time and money and your business was running itself, what would you be doing for fun? Number one answer is, Jim, I don't know. I haven't thought about that in a long time. And that is probably why you're stuck in the muck. I say we got to start dreaming again and start living our life now. You know my story about my dad who passed away a heart attack at age 62. When he died, our family's restaurant died. And he never got to truly enjoy the full fruits of his labor and retire and enjoy that time with my mom. And I think we don't have a lot of time in life and we should be enjoying that now. For some of you, you haven't taken a break in a long time. I recently had a client ask me if I'd like to come down to his house in Key West. And I said, yes, yes. And one of my friends said to me, wow, I would never say yes to somebody you barely know going to their house in Key West. How did you do it? I said, I need to say yes more often to myself. And yes, I don't know him very well because we're business per se, but I really want to enjoy my life. And sometimes you got to say yes to something so you can say no to other things. And Key West is not a bad place to go. And I'm so glad that I went down there and had a wonderful time to live my life. And I think we need to do that. We're coming to the end of the quarter. I'm going to ask you, in the last 90 days, have you done something for yourself? Maybe that's your roadblock. You haven't done anything for yourself, whether that's taking a break, getting a massage, going on a trip, doing something for yourself. That might be your roadblock. So as we finish up, I've covered a lot. I can continue to talk. I can talk about specific industries, which I really would love to do that. But I want to be responsible for those who are listening to this on our podcast or watching this on YouTube, is that if you know me very well, I really, truly want us to build a better business, to build a better life. And you're going to have roadblocks. My question to you, who's going to be your construction crew to get you through that roadblock? Who's going to level the playing field for you to be able to get to the next level personally, professionally, financially, spiritually, and all of those other elements? Again, I want to thank you so much for being here. Again, my name is Jim Roman. Remember, the more you know, the more we grow.